Mm-hmm.
We're teaching about all these things that at face value, someone might think like, why are you teaching these students how to drink? It's like, well, if they're going to do it, why not
do it safely?
Safe, you know, do it
Yep.
safe. And there's just so much backlash.
And it's the same thing with Narcan.
Same thing.
Having accessibility and availability to it, and training and of how to administer it. And, you know, if your friend is overdosing, have the Narcan available and good to go. And a lot of times we're also seeing, I did want to bring up the high rates of people going to the hospital, EMTs showing up. What made me think of it was you saying the anonymity. I can't say that word very well.
Anonymity.
Of the overdose, of overdosing, and so many, you know, why didn't you call the police? Your friend was overdosing and I didn't want to get in trouble. It's like,
exactly.
Now your friend's passed on, unfortunately. Don't think about getting it. You're not going to get in trouble. But also, in, you know, the other side of that is hospitals are not equipped to deal with this many rates of people coming in for overdoses, especially given this pandemic. That's their focus right now, is keeping people safe from COVID-19. And you have this flourishing higher rates of relapse and people overdosing. Hospitals don't know what to do with that. And that's why we need the preventative services, or services up the block, the drug treatment center, the syringe needle exchange programs that are there, and their purpose, they have trained professionals who know exactly what they're doing with this niche population, culturally appropriate. They can treat these people. They're going to treat them better, more straightforward, more streamlined, but it's not funded, and it's stigmatized, and it's not accepted. So we're going to the hospitals that are, you know, understaffed and underfunded, and explosion. It's America.
It's America.
It's just the way it's set up.
It's the system exactly as it was intended, unfortunately.
Yes, it is. It's purposeful.
It's purposeful. And so I have a question. This is more opinion-based, I guess. How much of the war on drugs campaign do you think is still residually here today?
All of it? Can that be an answer?
What would be 100%?
What is 100%?
Yeah.
You know, so much of that not only goes into the mass incarceration, but the lack of access of treatment. They posed this criminal who was doing drugs as again, their fault, their own action, they're dirty, it's their fault, they need to be criminalized, as opposed to, this is a disease, this needs to be treated, we need to get these people into treatment and care. And it went like this. And I think that's where all the stigma comes about it today, that drug addicts are dirty, or they're incompetent, or they're stupid, or they're homeless. And that is not true. It's the soccer mom up the street who broke her ankle, who was mass prescribed opioids, and she became addicted. And so, but it ties into that societal factor of what people think about drug addicts, why there's no access to treatment, why it's not funded. And again, that ties with the federal government and big pharma. They're like, well, you know what? We can make millions of dollars prescribing all of these things because we have our hand in that pocket. No, why are we gonna provide treatment for these people when we can make money off of them abusing substances?
How much, I mean, this is a question obviously I can look up after the fact. That's why I'm doing a fact check, because obviously I'm self-taught in most facets, but I know that you're more of an expert in this than me. How much funding really goes into rehabilitation centers, and how accessible is it for, yes, the soccer mom up the street, but for the single mother with 3 kids who twisted her ankle, who lives in an apartment building and is supporting herself?
Right. And a lot of what comes into that is a lot of lower income people are on Medicaid. And luckily, Medicaid does cover some treatments, but it's not the highest quality treatment. It's not the easily accessible treatment. It's not the, the things you see on TV. That's not accessible for 90% of the population who needs it.
Mm.
So I think that's definitely a huge factor into accessibility.
You know what really bums me out? That marijuana, cannabis is now legal and is now being celebrated in multiple forms. Edibles, oils, all these forms, and it's legal, and there are still multiple people, and by multiple, I mean thousands.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands being arrested for possession, arrested
distribution.
for distribution. And there are still people locked up for it today, and you look at how much on the docket maybe they were selling, and now it's being celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that at some point the research that you're doing can help that? The research that you're doing can open people's eyes to, hey, we got to provide resources so people can do this in a healthy way?
I hope so. That is my goal. Absolutely. That is absolutely my goal. But somewhat in terms of the, state's policies and laws on medical and, legal recreational marijuana, that just doesn't sit right with me. It's just unbelievable. It's also, it brings up the health inequalities across states in our country and policy, and how policy impacts that. And I mean, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. From one day to the next, you have that on you, you're going to prison. Oh, good. I'm glad you bought that. Now we're making money off of you. Mm. It's just, that's something, I think that's like the forefront of the easiest thing to address, to start this, reconciliation or reconcilement, I don't think that's a word, but of the impacts of mass incarceration. You're in prison for this much grass for the rest of your life? Like, no, get them out on parole. That's ridiculous. But because it's still federally illegal, it's up to the state. And so states who still have these feelings of it needs to be illegal have those people who are still in prison for it. And that brings up the other, somewhat related topic of how many people are in prison who have substance use disorders and don't get the right treatment for it as well. And that's such its own, breed of research. A lot of people do research in incarcerated people, and that's such an interesting area of research.
I am always interested too with the resources that are provided to those who are incarcerated. Like you understood, but the system, police, whoever. Mm-hmm. If someone gets arrested for having drugs in their system or intention to distribute, and then you put them in a jail cell, they start going through withdrawals. Mm-hmm. Are you providing them the resources to make that more comfortable? Probably not.
Probably not.
Because you've painted them as a criminal.
Right.
And it kind of goes back to the war on drugs, even like you're talking about like this much grass, like, and how it looks different federally to state federally compared to state. Mm-hmm. You look at how crack cocaine was criminalized. Like, one is like a rock and one is powder, but we're going to only criminalize the rock. Well, who can afford the rock?
Exactly. Yeah.
You look at who's the one buying rock versus powder. Mm-hmm. Let's criminalize that.
Right.
And that's the war on drugs. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to me now, now marijuana, cannabis, is that still a schedule? What is?
It's in the highest, it's in like the worst drug class because it has psychoactive properties, which means it's unpredictable. Are you fucking kidding me?
You serious?
Pardon my take.
Hot take. Right. Well, so what are the schedules again? It's schedule 1, 2, 3. There's 5 or 4?
I think so, and I should know more of this than 2.
It's okay. I'm gonna fact check.
Yeah, I just like searched it into my Google. I think there's 5,
Google
but
machine.
marijuana is in a more. So I think it's a Schedule 1. I think is
That's what I thought it was. Schedule 1, and it's along the lines with heroin, psychedelics, I think.
Yep. Heroin, LSD.
There you go.
Marijuana, peyote. So those psychoactive properties are what make it a Schedule 1 because it's unpredictable. So who knows what you could do on these substances is how they consider it.
I'm really interested about that definition because there are people who take psychedelics from a creative standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
How many cinematic gems, books, poems, songs are out there
from people
in which the creative was
LSD.
on some type of... Stephen King doesn't remember really writing Cujo. But you watch Cujo, you're like, God damn, I'm glad, like, how would you even think of some of this, like, terror stuff?
The Yellow Submarine. I mean, the whole Beatles, when they went through their phase, and it's like...
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds?
Come on!
Why is she in the sky?
Why does she have diamonds?
What? Like Alice in Wonderland. Like,
oh yeah, but you're right. These cinematic masterpieces.
Wizard of Oz
created. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Wasn't she on like a lot of like uppers? Elvis Presley. Like you look at all these people who were under some type of influence, but we revere them until we lose them.
Yeah. Right. And then they're a prodigy.
Amy Winehouse. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I was
great example.
Yeah, I was actually reading recently. It wasn't necessarily addiction that caused her to lose her life. It was eating disorder and the years of bulimia. That's what I was actually reading recently, which was interesting because I was like, huh. But it's one of those things of like you look at Corey Monteith. Like there are so many. People we lose to this, and we need to understand that this is not specific to just one group of those who suffer from addiction, and recovery looks different for everyone, and there's this art to it. And yeah, just because you're in recovery doesn't mean that you don't have tough days. It means that who's in your corner,
right?
What resources do you have so that those tough days are something that you can get up.
Yeah. Yep.
That's my soapbox.
Oh, absolutely. And you can compare it to, I mean, my first thought when you had said that was somebody who hasn't worked out in, 15 years wants to start working out again. If you don't have the social support or the gym or the shoes or, X, Y, and Z, it's
the knowledge.
The knowledge, right? It's a lot harder for you to start working out again than if your best friend who lives with you is a personal trainer, has all the equipment and can tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a similar, and that could go for, there's so many analogies, examples that you can tie it to, that behavior change is not linear, right? It's confusing, it's chaotic, it's personal, and there's a science to it, a personal science to it. You figure out what works for you and you ride the wave.
I love that though. It's chaotic. It is chaotic. And because physical activity, I feel like I'm going to claim it. It's a niche of mine. Mm-hmm. We need to stop shaming people for not working out and not eating right. Mm-hmm. We need to invite this conversation of like, why aren't they eating right? Why don't they feel the need to exercise? Mm-hmm. We know that exercise has so many properties that exceeds physique.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
When you get past that like sticking point And I'm using sticking point because that with weightlifting is called that sticking point. When you get to